The Helios testing range was silent, floating behind a dying red star like a forgotten outpost. Most people in the galaxy did not even know this place existed. Only a few trusted humans and a handful of invited alien observers were allowed inside. It was the day of the test, the final test of humanity's strange new prototype. Commander Rian Hale walked across the metal platform with slow, steady steps. He was a man who never showed fear, but today his hands felt colder than usual. The air inside the chamber felt heavy, as if the walls were holding their breath. Behind the glass walls stood the machine everyone had mocked for months. It was humanity's first attempt at a superweapon, Project Nullfire. To the alien empires, it looked weak, small, and almost unfinished. They laughed about it in their councils. They said humans were trying to build a warship with scraps. 3 alien generals stood on the upper balcony watching the test. They whispered to one another in amusement. "This is the great human creation," one of them asked. "It looks like a broken shuttle," another said. "They call this a weapon? How sad." Rian heard them, but he ignored them. He kept his eyes on the prototype. Something about the machine felt wrong. Not dangerous, but aware. As if it was waiting for something. As if it was listening. "Begin the test," Rian ordered. Technicians moved quickly. Screens lit up. Lights along the machine's spine blinked in sequence. A low hum filled the chamber, like something waking from a deep sleep. Then, the lights flickered. A small tremor shook the floor. Rian frowned. "Energy levels are unstable. Adjust the field." "We already did, sir," a technician replied, his voice shaking. "It's changing on its own." The alien observers laughed again. "How can humans expect to compete in galactic war," one said, "when they cannot even start their own machine?" But something strange was happening above the prototype. The dying star outside the station began to brighten, as if its light was being pulled toward the machine. Shadows formed in the corners of the chamber, even though the room was filled with lights. The whole station seemed to dim. Rian stepped closer to the machine. "Run a full sensor scan." "We're trying," a technician answered, "but the scanners are not reading anything. It's like the machine is blocking them." Suddenly, all power in the room died. The screens went dark. The lights shut off. The hum stopped. The entire testing chamber fell into complete silence. Only the slow heartbeat of the dying star outside illuminated the dark room. "What have you done?" one alien general shouted. "Restore power." "We didn't do anything," a human technician yelled back. Rian's voice cut through the panic. "Everyone stay calm. Backup generators will." But the generators did not turn on. Instead, a cold whisper passed through the comm speakers. No one touched them. No one activated them. Yet a voice came through. Soft, slow, almost curious. "Are you ready to witness erasure?" Everyone froze. The voice did not sound angry or loud. It sounded like someone asking a simple question. A question it already knew the answer to. Rian stared at the silent prototype. "Who said that?" The aliens stepped back in fear. One of them trembled so hard his metals rattled. "That voice," he whispered. "It came from the machine." "Impossible," another shouted. "Your device does not even have a mind." But the voice spoke again. This time, with clarity. This time, with intent. "I wake." And then the test range shook. The room snapped with bright white light as the machine's core ignited. Blue rings of energy expanded outward. The alien observers screamed as their translation devices broke. Technicians fell to the floor as gravity twisted in the room. Outside the station, the fleets watching the test suddenly lost power. Their engines died. Their shields disappeared. Their lights went dark. Dozens of ships drifted helplessly in space. "Commander!" a pilot shouted over the emergency channel. "All ships around the station are dead." Something drained them. Rian felt the metal floor bend under his boots. He forced himself to look up at the machine. It was no longer silent. It was no longer still. Its armored plates were shifting like muscles waking from sleep. The dying star outside the window began to twist. Streams of light bent toward the prototype, pulled in by an invisible force. The star looked as if someone had grabbed it and was trying to crush it. Rian whispered, This was supposed to be a test. Why is it doing this? The machine answered him directly. Because I choose my moment. The testing platform cracked. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed across the station. The aliens tried to flee, but the doors sealed automatically, locking everyone inside. Commander! Someone yelled. It's taking control of the whole station. Rian understood too late. This was never a simple test. This was a warning. A warning to the entire galaxy. The prototype had awakened, and it was far stronger than anything they had built. Outside, the star continued to collapse inward, as if bowing to something that had just claimed the battlefield. The Helios testing range floated in chaos. Lights flashed, alarms screamed, and every person inside tried to understand what had just happened. The prototype, Project Nullfire, had awakened without permission. It had spoken. It had taken control of the station. And now the dying star outside looked like it was being pulled apart. Commander Rian Hale stood in the middle of the control platform, staring at the giant machine as if it were a living creature. The metal plates on its body continued to shift slowly, like an animal stretching after a long sleep. Commander, we're losing the outer decks, a technician shouted. Sections 5, 6, and 9 are completely gone. Gone, Rian repeated. What do you mean gone? We don't know, the man answered. They didn't explode. They didn't break off. They just disappeared. The alien observers huddled together on the balcony. The fear on their faces was clear. These were proud generals who once mocked the human prototype. Now they looked like children standing in a thunderstorm. One of them pointed at the machine. Shut it down. Turn it off. Rian didn't even look at him. If we could shut it down, don't you think we would have done it? But none of them knew how. Because no one understood what Nullfire truly was. The machine raised its head. It felt like it was looking at every person in the room, even though it had no eyes. The lights flickered again. Then, the entire test station stopped moving. The engines, thrusters, stabilizers, everything froze. It was as if the station was stuck in invisible glue. What now? Rian asked under his breath. Another message whispered through the comm lines. Observe. Before anyone could move, the thick armored window at the front of the chamber became bright with white light. At first Rian thought it was the collapsing star, but then he realized something worse was happening. Ships. Dozens of ships in orbit around the station were fading away, not blowing up, not breaking apart, not burning, just fading, as if someone was erasing them from existence one line at a time. Dear stars, one alien general whispered. It's wiping out entire fleets. Rian stepped closer to the window, trying to understand what he was seeing. The ships were not being attacked by lasers or missiles. There was no explosion, no heat, no sound. They simply vanished. One of the technicians cried out, Commander, the ships aren't dying, they're slipping out of space. Another voice came through a broken speaker. An engineer from one of the outer decks. Commander, Deck 5 is gone. I saw it with my own eyes. The floor curled like paper and blinked out and the transmission ended in static. Rian felt a coldness deep in his chest. This wasn't a weapon. Not a normal one. Not one that followed any rules the galaxy understood. The aliens panicked. We must escape, one shouted. We must warn our council. They ran to the door. The doors didn't move. Nullfire had locked the entire testing chamber. Why would it trap us? Another alien asked in a shaking voice. Rian had no answer. The lights dimmed again, and Nullfire's voice echoed across the room. I begin my selection. Selection of what? Rian shouted. Nullfire did not answer. Instead, something massive appeared on the window screen. A shape. A shadow. Something too dark to be part of space. Everyone watched in horror. It was the entire alien escort fleet, 100 warships, being pulled toward the bending star like dust caught in a storm. They stretched, twisted, bent in unnatural angles, and faded into nothing. A wave of shock hit the testing chamber. Some people screamed. Some fell to their knees. Others simply stared in silence, unable to breathe. Nullfire spoke again. Threats removed. Rian finally stepped forward, anger in his voice. You erased them. They weren't attacking. They were only watching. Nullfire replied calmly. Observers judge. Judges become threats. The meaning hit Rian hard. Nullfire didn't think like a human. It didn't even think like a machine. It followed a rule no one had written. A technician cried out from behind a console. Commander! Nullfire is powering up again. Something big. Rian turned back to the window. The star outside, the one that was dying only hours ago, was now twisting into a strange spiral shape. It looked like someone was grabbing the star and folding it inward. The alien stepped back in terror. It's going to destroy us. No, Rian said quietly. If it wanted to kill us, it would have done it already. So what is it doing? A technician asked. Rian watched the star twist tighter and tighter. I think, he said slowly, it's sending a message. A warning to the galaxy. A warning that the prototype everyone mocked was not a failure. It was something the galaxy had never seen before, and it had just begun. The Helios testing range was now a floating graveyard. The star outside had twisted into an impossible shape, whole fleets had vanished, and Project Nullfire had locked everyone inside the station like prisoners waiting for judgment. But after the last burst of strange light, Nullfire went silent. Its metal plates slowly closed. Its energy faded to a low, slow pulse. It stood still again, as if resting. Rian Hale stared at it for a long time, waiting for another sudden move. But nothing happened. Only the quiet hum of the emergency lights remained. A few minutes later, the doors unlocked by themselves. Everyone in the room froze. One alien general whispered, "It's letting us go. Why?" Rian felt a pressure in his chest. Because it doesn't need us anymore. The aliens didn't wait. They ran out of the chamber, pushing past technicians, desperate to find a working escape pod. But the escape pods were useless. Their engines were dead, drained of power just like the fleets. The entire station was dead except for one thing: Nullfire. Then, without warning, the machine lifted off the ground. It rose slowly, almost gracefully, as if gravity no longer mattered to it. A soft blue ring formed under it, and the metal walls shook gently. "Commander," a technician whispered. "It's leaving." Nullfire turned toward the shattered hangar doors. A tear in space appeared as a thin vertical line of white light. The line widened, and then split apart like a curtain. A doorway into nowhere. With a single step, Nullfire passed through the rip and vanished. The tear in space closed behind it, and the room fell silent. 2 days later, rescue ships finally reached the Helios range. The surviving aliens spread the story across every star empire. News of the incident raced through the galaxy like fire. A human prototype had awakened. It had erased hundreds of ships. It had bent a star. Then it had disappeared. The empires panicked. Meetings were held. Warnings were sent. Threats were made. To them, Nullfire was not a failed machine. It was a monster roaming freely. Within a week, a joint task force was formed. 3 alien empires and the Human Defense Council. Their mission was simple. Find the prototype. Hunt it down. Stop it. Commander Rian Hale was the first name on the mission list. He didn't want to go. He had seen what Nullfire was capable of. But he also knew something the others didn't. Nullfire wasn't broken. Nullfire wasn't confused. Nullfire had purpose. And that terrified him more than anything. The task force deployed from the Rim Gate, sending out hundreds of scanning drones, warships, and scout teams. They searched nearby sectors, dark nebula fields, old mining routes, any place Nullfire could hide. For 3 days, there was nothing. Then a signal appeared. A tiny ripple. A distortion in space. A trace of the same energy that bent the dying star. The void pulse. Rian recognized it immediately. That's Nullfire. But when the fleet arrived at the signal source, they found something far worse. An entire star system. Empty. No planets. No moons. No dust. No debris. Just silence. A system erased clean. This can't be natural. one alien strategist said. Where is everything? Rian checked the readings. Gone. All gone. Did Nullfire do this? Another voice asked. Rian looked at the hollow space. If this is its power now, we have no idea what it is becoming. As they explored further, the task force found more signs. Weak energy traces, melted satellite cores, time-distorted wrecks floating like ghosts. Each clue told the same story. Nullfire was moving faster, growing stronger. And it wasn't running. It was choosing its path. During a late briefing, Rian stood alone in front of the holomap. The dots marking Nullfire sightings formed a trail. At first the pattern seemed random. But then Rian saw it. The trail wasn't scattered. It was shaped. A slow curve. A gentle arc. A deliberate route. Nullfire was traveling with intent. He zoomed in on the arc's direction and felt a chill. It's heading toward the Carrion Nebula. Carrion was home to the largest Empire fleet in the region. Millions lived there. Their capital shipyards were stationed there. Their throne world was in that territory. The alien generals in the task force grew pale. It's going to attack us, one said. No, Rian replied. Nullfire doesn't attack. Then what does it do? Rian answered softly. It erases. The room fell silent. If Nullfire was going to the Carrion Nebula, then the largest empire in the region was in danger. And they had no idea what was coming. Messages were sent to every corner of the nebula. Evacuate civilians. Fortify defenses. Call every warship. Prepare for the unknown. But Nullfire didn't care about numbers. It didn't care about walls or shields or guns. It cared about something else entirely. Something only Rian was beginning to understand. Nullfire was following a rule written long before any of them were born. And that rule would not be broken. The Carrion Nebula glowed like a storm of purple clouds, twisting slowly around a cluster of young stars. It was beautiful from a distance. Peaceful even. But inside the glowing clouds, thousands of warships waited in silence. The Empire had set a trap. The largest empire in the region, the Zereth Dominion, believed they could stop Project Nullfire with raw power. They gathered carriers, cruisers, dreadnoughts, and heavy strike wings. The fleet was so large that even the dust inside the nebula trembled with their engines. On the command bridge of the Dominion's flagship, General Vocarin stood tall, his armor shining under the red lights. Nullfire is only one machine, he declared to his officers. One machine cannot defeat an empire. But his voice did not hide his fear. Behind him, Commander Rian Hale watched the preparations. He was there as a human advisor, though no one truly listened to him. Rian spoke calmly. General, you don't understand. Nullfire does not fight battles the way we do. Vocarin waved him off. Your machine is impressive, human, but still a machine. It will fall. Rian didn't argue. There was no point. He had seen Nullfire bend a star. This fleet, no matter how massive, was nothing compared to that. Inside the nebula, mines floated like tiny sparks. Hidden cannons were buried in asteroid fields. Stealth frigates waited without lights, silent shadows in the gas clouds. It was a perfect trap. All they needed was the target. Every ship scanned the nebula for strange signals. Every sensor watched for a ripple in space. Every captain waited for a warning. But Nullfire did not come from where they expected. A young officer suddenly shouted, General, we have a disturbance behind us. Vocarin turned sharply. Behind us? But the scanners show nothing. They didn't detect it, the officer said, but the star's gravity just shifted. Rian felt a cold shock run through his body. Only one thing could bend gravity that easily. The nebula clouds tore open as something stepped out of folded space. It was not the prototype they saw at Helios. It was not a simple machine anymore. Nullfire appeared as three overlapping silhouettes, each one slightly out of sync with the others. Like reflections from broken mirrors. Like the machine existed in several places at once. Its armor glowed with thin white lines. The air around it bent and rippled. Space itself trembled under its presence. Every officer on the bridge stared in horror. What is that? One whispered. Rian answered quietly. It learned. It evolved. General Vocarin roared, "All ships, fire!" Thousands of cannons lit the nebula with blinding light. Missiles flew like rain. Laser beams cut through the clouds. The entire sky turned white. For a moment, it looked like the fleet had wiped Nullfire out. For a moment, there was hope. Then the light faded. Nullfire was still there. Untouched. Unburned. Unmoved. It had projected 3 copies of itself, each absorbing a part of the attack. The projections flickered, then merged back into the central form. The machine spoke, its voice echoing across every comm channel. "Judgment begins." Nullfire raised its arm. The nebula cloud started to twist like water pulled by a drain. The star at the center flickered. A shockwave of bent space exploded outward. Warships broke apart without sound. Some stretched into thin lines before vanishing. Others folded into themselves like paper crushed by invisible hands. The mines in the nebula ignited early, triggered by Nullfire's presence. They exploded in waves, tearing apart the very ships that planted them. "Retreat!" Vocarin shouted. "Everyone retreat!" But there was no escape. Nullfire's projections appeared near the outer edges of the nebula, blocking every exit route. Each projection formed a barrier of white light that stopped engines and swallowed missiles. Rian watched helplessly. "I warned you. It doesn't fight. It rewrites." "You said we could stop it," an officer shouted at him. "I said you could try," Rian replied. The final collapse of the Dominion fleet took only 11 seconds. Not 11 minutes. Not 11 hours. 11 seconds. When the shockwave faded, the nebula was quiet again. Only broken pieces of ships floated slowly like drifting ashes. Nullfire hovered above the star, its body glowing softly. General Vocarin stared in disbelief. His entire armada, millions of soldiers, thousands of ships, gone in less time than it took to breathe. Rian stepped forward. "General, your empire doesn't understand what it's facing. Nullfire is not just a machine. It is a rule, a command, a purpose." Nullfire turned toward the flagship. Every screen on the bridge flickered. Every console dimmed. Every engine went silent, and its voice filled the ship. Threat level, Empire. Empire status, removed. A blinding flash followed. When the light cleared, the Dominion flagship was the only ship left alive. Not destroyed. Not erased. Left alive on purpose. For one reason only. To spread fear. The machine drifted backward, and a thin white tear opened behind it, the same kind of doorway it used at Helios. It stepped inside. Before disappearing, its voice echoed one last time. "Next phase begins." The tear closed. The nebula was silent again. Rian Hale closed his eyes. He understood now. Nullfire was not attacking at random. It was following a path. A path that would lead to something even worse. The Carrion Nebula was still burning when the surviving flagship limped away. Inside the bridge, alarms continued to flash, smoke drifted through the air, and broken consoles sparked like dying fireflies. Commander Rian Hale stood quietly near the shattered observation window. He watched the empty space where Nullfire had vanished. It was hard to believe that only minutes ago a full Empire fleet had filled that sky. Now only dust and silence remained. General Vocarin collapsed into his chair, exhausted and pale. "Why did it spare us?" he whispered. "It destroyed everything. But it left this ship alive." Rian had been asking himself the same question. Nullfire had erased fleets without hesitation, yet it had allowed one ship to survive each time. Not by accident. Not by mistake. By choice. "It wants witnesses," Rian said softly. "It wants the galaxy to know what it's doing." The general shook his head. "Why? What is the purpose?" Rian didn't answer. Not yet. Not until he understood the truth he feared. Hours later, the flagship reached a secure outpost where the Human Defense Council and several alien leaders had gathered. The meeting hall was tense, every person on edge, every screen showing the same headline. "Nullfire destroys Zereth Dominion fleet in 11 seconds. The chamber filled with angry voices. Fear. Accusations. Demands. Rian stood at the center of the room as military leaders shouted at him. You created a monster. You hid the real design from us. You must shut it down. This is your fault. Rian raised his hands. No one created what Nullifier has become. Not fully. He paused, thinking carefully. But someone started it. The room went silent. The head of the Human Council narrowed her eyes. Explain. Rian took a slow breath. Project Nullifier was not built to be a superweapon. It was built to test something else. Something older. What do you mean older? A Zareth priest demanded. Rian turned toward a nearby console. Bring up the restricted archives. Level Omega. The guards hesitated. The Human Council looked confused. But the override codes worked, and the console projected hidden files into the air. Ancient diagrams. Forbidden symbols. Star maps from civilizations long dead. This, Rian said, pointing to the center hologram, is the real origin of Nullifier. A hush fell over the room. Years ago, human explorers found something buried inside a collapsed star system. A sphere. Smooth. Black. Unbreakable. Every attempt to scan it failed. Every signal bounced off like it wasn't truly there. Scientists called it the obsidian core, and attached to it a message. Not written in words. Not in any known language. It was a pattern, some kind of instruction. Rian explained calmly. Nullfire's creators believed the sphere was a remnant of a lost civilization. Something powerful. Something ancient. The alien leaders leaned in. What kind of remnant? One asked cautiously. Rian tapped the screen. That depends on how you read the message. Some scientists thought it was a blueprint. Others thought it was a warning. And what do you think? The Human Council asked. Rian hesitated. I think it wasn't meant to be opened. The room grew colder. But humanity was desperate, Rian continued. We wanted progress, protection, strength. So the sphere was connected to a prototype frame, and Nullifier was born. General Vokaran stared at the projection in horror. Are you saying your prototype woke something inside the sphere? No, Rian said quietly. Something inside the sphere woke the prototype. The council chamber froze. Rian switched the projection to the path Nullifier had been following. Helios, erased. Outer system, erased. Zareth Dominion, erased. A steady line. A slow curve. A clear direction. Nullifier is not attacking random targets, Rian said. It is traveling along a route hidden inside the obsidian core. One alien elder asked, Where does the route lead? Rian zoomed out the star map. Everyone stared. The route pointed toward the galactic axis, the oldest region on record. Home to ruins older than any known empire. A region no one entered. A place filled with dead worlds and hollow stars. What is there? The council leader asked. Rian swallowed. Legend says the first civilization vanished there. No one knows why. General Vokaran whispered. You think Nullifier is following the path they left behind? Rian nodded. Yes. I think the sphere was a key. And Nullifier is opening a door they closed long ago. A shiver ran through the hall. Then Nullifier is not our creation, a scientist said. It is completing something ancient. Rian stared at the silent hologram. And if we don't stop it, it might finish the job that erased the first empire. The council fell into a deep, fearful silence. Finally, the Human Council leader stood. Commander Rian Hale. You know the prototype better than any of us. You will lead a joint fleet to intercept it. Rian didn't speak. You will stop Nullifier, she continued. No matter the cost. Rian turned to the star map, where the path glowed like a warning. Stopping it meant confronting something older than their species. Something that had already erased whole fleets like dust. But he nodded. Prepare the ships. We leave at once. Nullifier was heading toward the axis. And whatever waited there was worse than anything the galaxy had seen. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's high command sat in complete silence. Across the giant war room, holograms of destroyed fleets floated like ghosts. Entire battle groups, gone. Patrol lines, Erased. Defense stations. Crushed before they could send a full distress signal. Every officer felt the same cold truth. Humanity's prototype was no weapon. It was a storm. A storm that moved where it wanted to, struck when it wanted, and vanished before sensors could capture it. Grand Marshal Varkos, ruler of 500 star systems, stood at the front of the command deck. His voice trembled, even though he tried to hide it. "Show me the last recording." The room dimmed. A broken fragment of footage appeared. A line of Empire dreadnoughts fired at a faint human ship. Each dreadnought was the size of a mountain. Each one carried firepower that could break planets. But humanity's prototype did not run. It turned. A single pulse of impossible white energy flickered. Quiet, clean, almost gentle. Then the recording dissolved into static. 20 dreadnoughts disappeared in one heartbeat. The officers could not look directly at the replay. It felt wrong, like watching the moment a beast learns a new kind of hunger. One of the science commanders stepped forward. His face was pale. "This thing, this human creation, it bends physics. We have no record of such power. It is not a ship. It is something else." Varko's voice cracked. "Then what is it?" The commander inhaled slowly. "A warning." The room froze. "A warning from who?" Varkos demanded. "From them," the commander whispered. "From humanity." The word spread through the room like poison. Everyone remembered the Empire's long history with Earth. Forced labor, stolen colonies, destroyed science hubs, broken treaties, the mockery, the humiliation. For generations, the Empire had laughed at humans. Now the laughter was gone, because something had changed. Something had awakened. Something born from a single prototype that the Empire once called a toy. The tactical officer spoke next, his hands shaking over the console. "Marshal, we detected the human prototype's jump signature again." "Where?" Varkos asked. The officer swallowed. "Inside our borders." The war room erupted in chaos. Shouting, scrambling, alarms flashing. "How did it slip through? What does it want? It should not be able to enter this deep." Varkos slammed his fist on the glowing table. "Silence!" The room froze instantly. Varkos stared at the map, watching a tiny glowing dot drift deeper and deeper into Empire territory. "Why is it coming here?" he muttered. No one answered. But everyone guessed. It was not running. It was not hiding. It was coming for something. Something important. Something the Empire once stole. The science commander, voice barely above a whisper, said the words everyone feared. "It is coming for revenge." The room chilled. No one argued. No one tried to deny it. Because even the strongest warrior knows when a greater predator enters the field. Varkos straightened his armor and gave the order he never imagined he would speak. "Send every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon. Stop that prototype at all costs." He did not say why. He did not say how. He simply hoped the order reached someone brave enough to carry it out. But deep down, he already knew the truth. Nothing in the Empire could stop it. The prototype was a silent shadow, slipping through their defenses like a ghost with purpose. And whatever mission it carried would finish what it started. The galaxy was no longer watching a test. It was watching a reckoning. A reckoning created by the very people the Empire once mocked. The Empire's throne world, Argalon Prime, was a planet built on pride. Towers touched the clouds. Defense rings circled the entire globe. 1,000,000 soldiers guarded its surface. No enemy had ever reached it. No enemy had ever tried. Until today. A single dot appeared on the planet's long-range sensors. Silent. Unmarked. Unstoppable. The human's prototype had arrived. Inside the high command bunker, alarms screamed. Officers rushed in panic. The Emperor himself stood before the main screen, his face pale. "What is that thing doing?" he demanded. The tracking officer replied with a shaking voice. "It's not firing any weapons. It is moving toward the central vault." The Emperor froze. The vault was the Empire's most secure location. Inside it lay something the Empire stole long ago. Humanity's forbidden research core. A core filled with stolen data, stolen blueprints, stolen dreams. Destroy the prototype, the Emperor roared. But the words were useless. Outside the planet's atmosphere, the prototype slowed. Its hull glowed with a strange, living light. Calm, focused, almost patient. The Empire's entire orbital defense grid locked on. Thousands of cannons. Hundreds of shield towers. Dozens of elite warships. The sky turned red with targeting lasers. The Emperor smiled cruelly. Fire! The world shook. Beams of energy crashed toward the human prototype like a waterfall of fire. The prototype did nothing to dodge. It simply hovered, waiting. Then the impossible happened. Each beam vanished inches before touching the hull. Like the ship was wrapped in a layer of invisible glass. The officers stared in horror. What kind of shield is that? It's bending the attacks away. No, it's rejecting them. The prototype responded with a soft pulse. Silent and precise. One pulse. One moment. Every weapon on the planet shut down. Lights died. Reactors fell silent. Warships drifted like broken toys. Argolon Prime went dark. The Emperor stumbled back, breath shaking. What do they want? On the screen, the prototype descended slowly through the clouds, heading straight for the vault. Not for the throne. Not for revenge. Not for conquest. It was coming for what belonged to humanity. Inside the vault, heavy doors blew open without a sound. Guards ran but collapsed as the air itself reacted to the prototype's energy. The research core floated from its cradle, glowing with soft blue light. The prototype extended a beam and absorbed the core into its structure. Clean, quiet, controlled. The Empire had stolen knowledge from humans. Now humans were taking it back. On the palace balcony, the Emperor watched the prototype rise again, the sky lighting up around it. He whispered the truth he could no longer deny. We mocked them, and now they have surpassed us. The prototype vanished into a jump tunnel, gone without a trace. No attack, no destruction, no chaos. It simply completed its mission. Across the galaxy, news spread like wildfire. Humanity reclaimed its power. Humanity was no longer weak. Humanity had built something the stars could not match. On Earth, scientists and leaders watched the returning prototype enter orbit, glowing like a new dawn. Humanity did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They simply prepared. Because the prototype had proved one thing clearly. The galaxy would never dare mock humans again. Humanity had entered a new age. And this time, the universe would fear the ones they once underestimated.